Great, go ahead, thanks.
Thank you very much, and welcome this morning to the electoral area. I beg your pardon, the electoral areas of both Comox Valley and Strathcona Regional Districts, Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee. And today is Monday, February the 8th. As the chair, I'll be presiding over this meeting. All decisions at this meeting, of course, will go to the Comox Valley Regional District Board for ratification at the end of the month. There's not much to report as far as the agenda goes. We have a recognition of traditional territories, which I'll do right now because we are doing our business today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nations. There's no delegations today. We have no management report. We do have staff to explain the public input for the financial plan that's available to us during these extreme COVID times when we can't all have town hall meetings and such. So I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Director. And I'll just ask Jake to explain the public input process and advise whether we've received anything to date for this.
Thank you, Russell. Yeah, so this is an opportunity in which we can bring forward any questions or public feedback regarding the financial planning process. All the information is available on our website, so we encourage anyone watching this meeting, if they do have questions or feedback, to visit our website, and the link is, or the web address is there on the agenda. As I mentioned, this would be the point in which we would bring forward any of that feedback respecting any of the BCOB services. At this time, there is none, so I have none to report at this moment.
Of receipt of the staff report on public input.
I'll second that. Any discussion on receipt? Anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that's carried. Moving right along into reports, we have the Black Creek Oyster Bay Local Water Service Area Development and Capital Improvement Charges Bylaw Amendment for receipt.
Okay, move receipt.
And over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Director. And Chris LaRose is here that will provide some background on this and answer any of your questions.
Good morning through the CAO and through the chair. So this report recommends amendment to the BCOB Water Service DCC bylaw and the CICC bylaw. So the CICC follows the DCC rate. So the DCC rate is currently the bylaw currently does not have a rate category for campsites. The closest that would qualify, but potentially, would be a tourist accommodation. But we understand through significant analysis by staff that typical water usage for campsites differ significantly from a typical tourist accommodation. So campgrounds can be high consumers during during the summer months, but are at a lower level than you would typically see from a hotel room or a rental cabin. So to ensure that the capital costs associated with providing the additional capacity for developments that do include campgrounds, we are recommending that an amendment to both the DCC and the CICC bylaws be made. So the current unit charge for family or single family residential dwelling and tourist accommodation is $6,058 per unit. So we undertook an assessment of the various demands for the various types of development uses, and we researched what other Vancouver Island jurisdictions currently have in place for this type of development, and we came up with the recommendation of $1,414 per campsite. So we've attached to the report red line drafts of both bylaws showing the proposed changes, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from Director Lee?
Yes, please. I have a few questions. First of all, I note that the map that's attached in the Schedule 2 does not include Area D. It's just referring to the Black Creek side of the river. I have had inquiries from at least one person anyway, looking at setting up a campground in Area D. I don't know how serious it is, but I've had a few inquiries from one of them, and it is totally possible that we might have need to expand that map to include our whole water service area for both sides of the river, because we may have an imminent application, and I don't want people to think there's two different sets of rules within BCOB. So that's one point. The other point I'd like to make is that I really think that we need to add the word commercial to the definitions in the bylaws, because I don't think that camping per se, you know, in tents and whatnot, you know, in various campgrounds, non-commercial campgrounds. I don't want it to get mixed in with this, because there is free camping in our, you know, in our wilderness areas, and I don't want people to find that confusing. And also, you know, the claim that that campsites or RV sites don't use as much water as a household. In Area D, I have half a dozen large RV parks, and those RV parks are occupied. Some of them, those spots have been occupied for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And they're living there year round. People tend to, as soon as they find a spot near the ocean, they want to stay there, and they don't just stay for 30 days. They stay for forever. And so I don't see that they use so much less water, but I want it to be sort of referring to tourist commercial sites that have to pay for this $1,400 per RV site. I don't see it as camping. I see it as, you know, semi-permanent residence and year round. That's how it is. Whether we see it that way or not, that is how it is. And so the other third point I wanted to make is that I'm not sure how much we're charging for DCCs. It says CICC is $1,414 per campground, per site, per space. And what is the DCC charge then? Is it additional? My question.
Okay, thank you, Director. I can address each of those questions. So regarding the first one, the map included in the bylaw was actually for the purpose of defining an area which overlaps entirely with the Watuco system. So it was amendment that was done early last year to provide for the mechanism of a repayment of CICC over time should Watuco convert or be assimilated into the service. So prior to that, the rules would have required, and for elsewhere that not defined in that map in Schedule B, repayment has to happen immediately of a connection. So that's the purpose of the map. I can reassure you that this DCC and CICC bylaws apply to the entire water service area on both sides of the Oyster. So I feel like that satisfies your first point. And then regarding the second one, just the concept that that some of these campsites could be used in a manner that's maybe conflicts with the intention here. I think that 2 points to that. One is that we did do extensive research up and down the island, looking at what other jurisdictions have done, and the rate that we've selected is you know, average to high compared to those other jurisdictions. And second of all, the use that you're referring to, I believe, and I'm not a planner, but I believe that it is at odds with our zoning bylaw, which doesn't allow for continuous use for longer than 6 months, I believe, of an RV on a campsite. So so those would be my 2 points to that one. And then thirdly, The question, I believe, was if CICC is in addition to DCC, and that's not how they're used. So DCC, this DCC for campsites would be used in a situation where an existing property in the service area is being redeveloped, or there are some way campsites being added to an existing property in the service. The DCC would be relevant. The CICC is exactly the same rate, but it applies to properties that are being brought into the service area. So new properties previously outside of the service area. So for example, the Bcob properties, if that process proceeds, would pay the CICC rate, exactly the same as the DCC. But for, say, another development that's happening within the service area would pay the DCC rate.
So is the DCC rate and CICC, are they stacked on top of each other for a new development? Or is it just 1414 per pad?
It's not stacked. It's one or the other. That's right. So it's
One
just
or
14
the other.
Yes, depending on whether
Okay.
you're in already or you're being brought into the service area.
Okay. Mr. Chair, may I continue? I have a few other things.
Okay, I got a few of my own, so I'll let you go.
I can let you go first.
Okay, I will. Just a couple of questions. I got some more as well. Now, my understanding is this is basically crafted for the Watuco water service being assimilated into the Black Creek Oyster Bay, is it not?
Certainly, that potential conversion process is one of the drivers. There is also an additional or another development, so that is happening within the service area near the Saratoga Speedway, and so that development is also proposing to add a significant number of campsites. So we have those two situations that both warrant the creation of a campsite DCC, and our expectation is that there will be others as well.
I'm just wondering if this might be viewed as being in bad faith, being as though negotiations have been going on with the Watuco system, and this is coming in on the 11th hour. I know that we go back to the McDonald Stewart report from a memorandum of understanding from 2016. It speaks of goodwill in when they acquire a private utility, and I do understand that Watuco are also bringing $150,000 from their own reserve fund to the table. Is that correct?
I'd just like to provide comment to your first statements, Director or Chair Grieve, and that is the regional district is operating in good faith with all of the applicants that are being considered with respect to potential connection to this water system and others within the regional district. As the members are aware, Watuco has approached the regional district and staff have been working with them to undertake thorough and extensive analysis to support them in their consideration of whether they join the water system. All our communications with them have been above board. All of them have been in good faith. And what we have to protect are the interests of the existing water users to ensure that any new connection does not create a burden on the existing water connections, and also that any new connection does pay for the existing infrastructure and support that is already provided. That is the basis of our negotiations. Nothing has been finalized yet. We are willing and able to meet with the applicant to discuss this further, but I want to assure everybody that the regional district is operating in good faith with respect to this application.
Thank you. Just one more thing through to Chris. When we have on the Watuco system 129, is it not? Where am I at? I got old notes here. I think 129 units and 120 residential units and 2 commercial. So that's before we take into consideration the expansion of the Saratoga Speedway grounds, correct? But they're not in Watuco.
No, I was going to say those are
completely
separate issues.
So I'm just wondering, the way that the campsites pay now, they just have the 1 meter, do they not?
At the Pacific Playground, yes, they just have the 1 meter. So, but they've over time, well, in terms of the cost recovery model within Watuco, they've negotiated a type of proportional payment. So they don't just pay 1 out of 128 or 130
Oh, no.
connections. No, they have, they pay approximately a third or something to that effect. So they've got that worked out internally without the use of meters. Of course, if and when conversion happens, it will be fully metered, and there will be a conservation rate structure implemented.
So that would be under a commercial rate, correct?
Correct.
So Director Lee was quite right. Okay, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Yes, I wondered if these rates, so I have a half a dozen RV parks that have been here for 50 years, and even before I became director. And are they grandfathered then from any charges like this? Unless they do a redevelopment?
Correct.
Okay, so they're not going to be affected, the ones who've been living here. At one point, the Comox-Strathcona Regional District, prior to 2008, when the regional district was split in half, we were petitioned by the owners of the RV parks and residents of the RV parks to not apply the 30-day. We have a 30-day in Area D stay in an RV park, and the board decided at the time not to enforce that. It's difficult to enforce because they can just move their camp unit to another site within the site or a different site. It's really impossible to enforce. And also the RV park owners came to the board and said that they really couldn't financially make it on tourism dollars, on short-term stays. They needed the longer-term stays to be able to maintain cash flow throughout the year, in the fall and winter and whatnot, to maintain their business. And so the regional district decided not to enforce that, the short stay bylaw for tourists. I don't think that we can rely on tourism because these will be, even at Watuco, semi-permanent, if not permanent, residents in the area. And I want to make sure that both the bylaws reflect that they refer to these RV pads as commercial and not simply just camping spots. They're not camping spots. They are RV pads for semi-permanent residents and some permanent residents. So I think our bylaws need to reflect what's actually happening on the ground.
Thank you very much, Director. It's a very important observation, and that is that these camping spots do have demands on our water system year-round. They are not just short-term. And that's in part why we're bringing this forward, is to ensure that they also pay the capital costs that they should be associated with. Definitely both regional districts, Comox Valley and Strathcona, are probably grappling with the issues of longer term stays. And I know our land use planners have been advising our electoral area services committee with respect to that and acting accordingly. But those are policy decisions made outside of the water bylaws and such, and through land use planning, but we're very mindful of that at this regional district.
Would I be able to move an amendment to the bylaws, the red line version of the bylaws, to
that point? Yeah.
To insert to insert the word commercial in front of campsite. And I don't even think we should call them campsites. We should call them RV sites or RV pads, and insert the word commercial in front of them. Commercial RV, RV stroke camping space. But I don't think we should just leave it open to campsites that could be misinterpreted as, you know, people camping in other places that aren't on the water system. I mean, it would clarify that we want to consider it to be commercial campsite, commercial RV stroke campsites, and that would clarify things for people and for the public.
Well, I would throw this to staff, because I'm sure that there's been a lot of hours put into this bylaw as it is, and that's been probably considered. And to make amendments like this on the fly always has unforeseen consequences. So I'll throw it back to staff.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion. I think what the chair is absolutely right. I don't think it would be appropriate to necessarily commit to a change right now. But what I can commit to is that we will. I certainly I well understand the concern and the question, so we can take that away and do a review of the bylaw. And if we think there is an opportunity to improve the clarity by specifying the commercial nature, then we'll do so.
Yeah, I'd like to bring the focus back to the local water service area, because we are straying into some of the fringes around land use planning, whatever definitions of campgrounds and such. So I would be happy with that if the director from Area D would.
Well, I would agree with Chris that we should refer this report and those recommendations back to staff to review whether we can insert the word commercial into there before we proceed. I don't see there's any, big rush in getting these bylaws through today. I think we should make sure we do them right rather than do them fast. So I would move that.
Well, we're not at that point, Director. We're still on receipt.
Okay. Thought we voted on receipt already.
No, we don't vote until after we move it. Over DAO, I think.
Yeah, no, that's correct. It's just on receipt right now. To respect the information that is desired, might I recommend that you proceed, if once received, that you proceed with the recommendations and ask staff to bring forward to the board the consideration of the amendment as proposed and its implications, so that at the board table you will have the opportunity to move forward with these bylaws one way or the other, with the advice that staff will provide you on the proposed wording change.
I tend to agree with that, because this is budget time and we have a whole load of stuff on our plate. So I don't know about you, Brenda, but we've got what, 92 different functions and services now, all going through budget. So we could bring it back at the board and do the amendments there, if that would be agreeable to the Area D director.
I'm a little nervous about doing that, because we could make that amendment here today and then amend it back the other way after staff review it. What's the difference? If we put commercial in front of it and we pass that today and it goes to the board, and then staff say, oh, well, we reviewed it and commercial doesn't have to be in there, then we could easily take it out at the board. But we won't be able to do anything if we pass these recommendations. And I still want commercial in there in front of RV campsites. We won't be able to do anything, and I don't want to be pushed into this, because I don't think it's right. I don't think it reflects what's happening on the ground.
Maybe I'll just, following up on that, I just during the conversation there, just did a quick scan, and I just want to point out that we don't use the word commercial in front of the other obviously commercial type. For example, in the definition of tourist accommodation, we don't mention that it's commercial. So we don't use commercial in that sense through the document. So I think the way that it's currently defined as campground doesn't refer to commercial camping space. Similarly, I think it would stand out, and it would force a more general review of this document, which I don't feel is warranted.
Does the director have a degree of comfort?
No, I don't. Because I know what happens on the ground, and I know they're going to be semi-permanent housing residences on Wetiko. They're not going to be like overnight or short-term stays.
But we're only talking about the DCCs here. We're not talking about land use planning, because that would be definitely a different kettle of fish.
Well, they're defining what a campsite is, and the
you and I
campsite
both,
isn't.
yeah, but you and I both know the reality on the ground. All you have to do is go to Salmon Point and see that there's those $200,000 motorhomes neck to neck where people have moved out here from the city or from other provinces, and they're still looking to buy land at less than $1 million a pop. So they're living in their motorhomes. So it's just a reality. The other side of the coin, of course, is you probably know that the ministry itself has told us to relax policies on that sort of thing. So, it's really not the place for this discussion. But let's call the question on receipt at least, if we may. Anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, then that carries. Now, again, would you be comfortable moving these recommendations and having staff come back at the end of the month if there's any issue around commercial? Because I think in a way we're kind of splitting hairs. We're losing sight of what the bylaw is intending to do. I mean, I have some reservations myself on it because of the Wetiko conversion being stalled right now. But I think we should move ahead with this. We have so much more to contemplate before the 31st of March.
For the chair,
if you do move forward with these recommendations, staff will provide a legal opinion on the proposed amendment for your consideration of the board. But we do encourage you to proceed with the recommendations as they are. Further refining campgrounds just may have unintended consequences of ruling out the application of this to non-commercial, such as provincial parks or otherwise. It's just, there will be unintended consequences the more that you define this and refine this. And certainly, as you've stated, this is a land use matter that can be addressed through our land use bylaws rather than the DCC bylaw. So I would encourage you to proceed with the recommendations and then provide advice for staff to bring forward an opinion with respect to the proposed change, and that can be considered at the board before you proceed.
Okay, well, I'll move recommendation 1 and 2, subject to legal opinion being obtained on the insertion of the word commercial before each site. I don't really want to call them camping spaces. They are RV pads. And I would move that 1 and 2 be moved subject to a legal opinion from Staples McDonald Stewart on the insertion of the word commercial.
I wouldn't specify exactly which law firm that does it.
Okay.
I
Take
support
that out,
it.
but
And bring it back at the board level, correct?
no, back to committee. We need to make this do we have to have this passed before March 31st? Is it part of the net 2021 budget?
Good point.
Yeah, just maybe just to follow up on the previous discussion. I think the use of the word, the potential or the desired use of the word commercial is problematic. So the types of development as currently defined in the DCC, residential dwelling, single family, tourist accommodation, industrial, and then commercial and institutional. So commercial is actually a separate standalone type of development as defined in the DCC bylaw.
Yeah.
to which we're planning to add campground. So campground, industrial, tourist accommodation, residential dwelling, those are all categories, and as is commercial institutional. So that's why we don't see the use of the word commercial in front of these other types of
Okay,
development,
how
which are
about-
clearly commercial in nature.
How about the word tourist accommodation? Because that's more like what it is.
So
It's not, we're not talking about campsites necessarily. We're talking about tourist accommodation overall. And they might include tents, they might include, you know, RV pads. Most likely they will be RV and trailer pads. And they most likely will be semi-permanent. And I know that's a land use issue, but we need to recognize what's going to happen here. We're going to have a big draw on our water system, 128 units at Cicc possibly, and then I don't know how many at Saratoga Speedway. How many are being proposed for there?
A similar number.
So we got 250 new residences drawing off our water system. That's going to be a big draw.
Well,
So
Madam, just to be clear, Watuco's bringing their own water.
okay.
You know, we have that. Well, if we're not going to move the recommendations, then I guess we need to.
I would move the recommendation subject to the legal opinion on, instead of commercials, call it tourist accommodation.
Well, we have a current type of development called tourist accommodation and that's intended for you know, hotel rooms and rental cabins, and that's set at the same level as the residential level, so 6,058. So that's an existing category. So we can't call it that. It's a.
Okay, let me not be prescriptive then. Let's just say, let's move the recommendation subject to legal opinion on what we can call it. You know, but let's call it what it is, not tent sites and camping, not that.
Well, so what is okay.
So when is our next Black Creek Oyster Bay committee meeting coming up? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, we're just
Sorry.
looking it up. March 8th, so a month's time.
When do we have to have these bylaws in place?
It's preferable just to proceed with it. We've done all the background work or otherwise. It's very close. As Chair Grieve mentioned, it's just workload or otherwise that moving this forward is advantageous to us here. So if you would be comfortable, we can definitely bring if you were to move these recommendations and seek further information on this one particular item, we would provide that information to you at the next board meeting so you can consider it at that time.
Okay, I'll second that. So it's been moved and seconded. On recommendation 1, any further discussion? Any opposed? That carries. Recommendation 2.
Move to. And same
Seconded.
comments as the previous one.
Exactly. Okay. So on to any opposition? Anybody opposed? Then that carries as well. Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you.
Financial Plan Supplement, Black Creek Oyster Bay, Fire Protection Function 230, report for
My receipt.
and seconded. And above, okay, we're going to staff for.
Thank you very much, Chair and Director. And James Bass, Manager of Fire Services, is here to explain this brief report and answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Through the CAO to the Chair and Committee. At the January 25 Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee meeting, the proposed 2021 to 2025 financial plan was referred back to staff to provide some options with regards to lowering the tax requisition in that first year. Staff went back and reviewed all aspects of the proposed budget, and in the context of the COVID-19 renewal plan, as well as in the context of planned capital purchases, Staff has been able to come forward with a relatively balanced approach to making some cuts to that budget. The first aspect of it is within the operational grant to the fire service itself. We have the opportunity to save about $7,000. We can save that in the context of future obligations and for planned purchase of capital projects. We're able to recommend a further $8,000 in reductions or deferral to make a total of $15,000 in the requisition for the service. With that, I'm available for any questions that may be required.
Thank you very much, James. Director, any questions?
No, move receipt of the report.
We've got that in.
Done that? Have we voted on it?
No, I have a few questions.
Okay.
Just not really a question, just my never-ending squeaky wheel statement that I am concerned about making reductions to the budget when we have to make it up later. I think the reductions that are true savings, are fine, but I'm not one of those people that think it's all going to be blue skies and sunshine over the next couple of years and we can ramp back up again, because I don't think we should be looking at the pandemic like it's going to be something that's going to be a quick fix and then by 2023 we'll be back to normal. Could well be, it could well be not. So my question to the staff is, are we going to have to play catch up on this budget? I know it's only $15,000, but are we going to have to find that money somewhere else in the future budgets?
If I may, through the CAO to the chair and committee, the $7,000 reduction in operational grant is a clear reduction, as it won't be required at all this year. That is that the Fire Chiefs Association, the training seminars will not be in person, and so that's a very clear savings. With regards to the reduction of $8,000 in the capital reserve, that is an ongoing contributing to planned future capital purchases. It is analyzed annually, and it is known that within the regional district we will be developing a asset management plan that will be more prescriptive with regards to the amount that should be put in savings each year for capital reserve. But until that time, the 8,000 is a balanced approach, and we will be able to accomplish it.
And I do understand that the province is finally stumping up funding for fire halls or for fire departments for apparatus and training. Is that correct?
Yeah, I understand that as well. That those funds will manifest in the next iteration of the budget, the proposed budget.
We want to make sure we get in queue for that.
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I don't know. I can't see the icon for putting up my hand, so I'm just going to ask to speak.
I can see you.
Oh, good. All right. So all I want to say is I appreciate what the chair is saying about, not giving back any extra funds we might find in case we need them in subsequent years after COVID. And I agree, but this is found money coming out of grants that they, are replacing the tax dollars. So the service isn't going to suffer this year. They're still getting what they need, and the $15,000 reduction is really minor when you look at the overall budget. It's not really going to make a difference one way or another too much, but it is a reduction, and I think it would be viewed by the public as being, an effort to help them through this year. People are having a hard time. Some people are not working, so I really think this is okay. for this year. So
Very
I would
good.
like,
So we're okay. So we're on receipt. We'll take the vote on that. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. And recommendation 1, if you could have it moved
move recommendation 1.
and seconded. Any discussion on 1? Seeing none, that carries. Oh, sorry. Anybody opposed to 1? Then it carries. Okay, recommendation 2
Move 2.
and seconded. Any discussion on 2?
I have a question.
Please.
Okay, that big long clause in there, clause B, that says, it's just a little confusing for my little, layman's brain, to figure out what it means when it says that funds will transfer to other functions. I think funds spent by Black Creek Oyster Bay to help set up, train the Merville, Mount Washington firefighters. I think that any monies that get transferred should transfer back to Black Creek Oyster Bay and not transfer to other functions. But the third line in clause B, it says transfer to other functions, and it doesn't specify what functions. It doesn't say transfer back to repay Bcob for all of our expenses in helping set up these fire departments. So I'd like to know what other functions you mean. What do you mean by other functions?
Mr. Chair and Director, a very good comment. I think that should read from other functions rather than to, because it is the intention that those other functions are paying for their service.
Oh, that makes me feel better there. Oh, thank you.
So
Yeah.
if you were to move this recommendation, amending the to from in clause B.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
So I've been moved with the recommended change then?
I'll make a formal.
Okay.
With an amendment to 2B to state transfer other functions to Black Creek Oyster Bay. That's my amendment. So it's.
Has that been captured? I think they're frozen up down there. Oh, no, they're moving again.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we've got it. Thank you.
Got it? Okay.
Okay. So that's moved. I'll second it.
Okay. What does it mean in D? Like, do we even need to have D in there? It says annually share the cost allocations with the Electoral Area Service Committee.
Mr. Chair and Director, the intention of this is just to be sure, because those others, in the case of Merville, is a service that is for the Comox Valley Regional District. That service is normally managed through the Electoral Area Committee. So it's just a matter of informing that committee of what is proposed, just for information sharing. Because
so how about saying annually share information regarding the cost allocations with the East?
Sure, that would be just as valuable. Yes.
Share information. We're not sharing the cost allocations.
Yes, it is the information. That would be good. Yeah.
Because the cost allocations stay with Bcob. So the information on and I'll make that amendment too. So it would read D, 5D or 2D, annually share the cost allocation information with the Electoral Area Services Committee. So just insert the word information after cost allocations. That's my amendment.
Okay. We'll make sure it's been captured.
Yes, thanks, Chair. We're good.
We're good. Okay. So on to any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, we'll call the question on to. Anyone opposed? Seeing and hearing none, that carries. And moving right along. You have to move the screen forward. I can't. Where are we at here? There we go. So we're on the financial plan for function 313, which is the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Local Service Area. A report for receipt.
Move receipt.
And seconded. And over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Director. And Chris LaRose is here to provide a summary of the report and answer any of your questions. He's also supported by Mike Hirschmiller, who is here as well.
Hi, Mike. How's it going?
Thanks, Russell, and through the chair. As Russell mentioned, I'm here to present the 2021 to 2025 financial plan for the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Local Service Area. And Mike Hirschmiller, our Manager of Water Services, is here to support, and will provide. We'll do a bit of a tag team. He'll provide the overview of last year and this year's key tasks, and I'll get into the details. So Lisa's just bringing up a presentation we've developed to help guide us through it. Thank you, Lisa. Let's see, is this turned on? There we go. Great. So just very briefly, because I know you're both very familiar with the service. So the service area includes now 3 groundwater wells, 2 of which are fully operational, and the third of which will be coming online shortly, and then a river infiltration gallery as well. So together, those form our source water capacity. It supplies water to approximately 950 homes, about a third of which, or 30% of which, are north of the Oyster, and the remainder south. And then the revenues for the service come from both the user fees as well as our frontage tax. So I'll just pass you over to Mike to talk you through the 2020 work plan accomplishments.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a very interesting year with COVID, as it has been for everybody. It's impacted our work and how we do our service. Generally, with multiple operators on one job, or else visiting homeowners. But we have developed some good plans and procedures, and it's actually gone quite well. So just a couple of the accomplishments from 2020. We have finalized the right-of-way agreement with the SRD for the infrastructure in the park. This was a big milestone that's formally acknowledged the infrastructure that's there currently, as well as the new well, and that allows us to just be able to work with SRD park staff generally to do any kind of operations or maintenance within the park. As well, we've finally completed the drilling of the new production well. That drilling consisted of a couple of test wells, and then the actual drilling of a 20-inch production well. The kiosk and piping are being constructed just as we speak. Those tie-ins are happening, and we expect to be online by the end of March, or construction completed anyway by the end of March. We also completed a highway residential water meter replacement. So we're looking at a 5-year plan to replace all the old aging residential water meters. And we picked the highway first, as currently the operators had read meters just by they're actually touch reads. So they have to walk to every meter and stick a transmitter wand onto the meter, and it transmits the read. Which, as you can imagine, can be quite dangerous along the highway, since it's just basically a truck with a driver and then an operator who's kind of getting out and running to every meter. So the new technology is a cellular read, and we can read the meters a lot quicker by push of a button from our office, actually. And we've set up all the services to identify any leaks. So if there's a leak, we can find it in one day rather than every 4 months when we historically did the reads. And then another kind of major accomplishment is we completed Rov inspections, so just remote operated vehicle inspections of the internals of our reservoirs of Kelland and Macaulay Reservoir. And I've just included a couple of photos here in the next slides of that process, because it's new to us. We haven't done that historically. As you can see from the reservoirs, it's quite a tall tank, and there's an access hatch at the bottom and the top. Obviously, if you go in the bottom hatch, you need to completely drain the reservoir. And as you walk up the outside of the tower, there's landings to kind of rest as you're climbing up, I guess, or just for safety. But inside, there's just a ladder from the top to the bottom. So you're dealing with confined space. It's difficult to see the whole reservoir, all the walls and all the bolt seams. So using a underwater kind of submersible camera, we can get really detailed inspections of the reservoirs inside while they're in use. And in that photo I've attached, the two top ones are kind of poached from the internet, but it's the same unit that we were using. The bottom one is the actual inside bottom of Kelland, and you can see the piping on the right is the inlet piping. There's a bell on the far left-hand side of the picture, and that's the outlet piping. And then the kind of the line along the floor slab in the middle is cathodic protection. So we inspect every bolt seam. We can actually, it's clear enough that we can get an engineer to sign off on the integrity of the reservoir as well. So we've done this, and we did this for our whole water system this year. Moving forward to 2021. We expect the kiosk and piping, as I said, for the new well to be completed in March, and we'll have it commissioned and online by April. We are looking to embark on a Bcob water master plan, and this will just better help us identify, not growth so much, but how to grow the water system with the growth. Looking at when we're replacing old infrastructure. Do we need to resize it? Is it more advantageous to reroute it? So the master plan will help us understand that a lot better, as well as we're always, continuing to assess our needs and look at additional water sources. We're continuing with year 2 of 5 of the residential water meter replacement program, and as well as doing a water main replacement on Schultz Paulson, this one's kind of grown over the years into what it is now. And this is the optimal, I suppose, growth for to connect the two systems rather than just upsize Paulson to increase fire protection at the school. This will actually, this will do a better job by connecting it to Schultz. This will do a better job for both quantity and quality as well, because we won't be creating a dead end. And then the final work plan priority is to switch our existing disinfection from chlorine gas to sodium hypochlorite. Just a couple quick reasons for this, safety being the first one. Sodium hypochlorite is essentially a 12% bleach, and it's generally used more so in the industry now than the chlorine gas, just due to safety alone and the risks of working with the gas. We are changing our new Comox Valley water treatment plant is now going to be on sodium hypo instead of chlorine gas, and if we keep gas in Black Creek, then all the cost of certifying our chlorine repair parts and pieces, as well as our SCBAs and personal protective equipment, will now fall to completely covered by the BCOB system. So just looking for efficiencies there, and where efficiencies once made sense for chlorine gas, now it makes sense for sodium hypo. Then I guess the last thing is the pH. The pH coming out of the wells has been an issue in the past. That's why we adjust the pH with the caustic in the disinfection facility, and just chlorine gas tends to minorly bring the pH down, whereas hypo actually brings it up a little bit. And we're talking points, the whole number, so it's not a huge increase, but it does help the pH as well. So that's all I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Wow, that Kelland looks brand new inside. I just wonder what would be the water pressure at the bottom of that tank? It'd be pretty tremendous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's about, I've got to think it's about, however tall the tank is, about 100 feet. So it's approximately 50 PSI.
Yeah. Good stuff.
And we are blessed with great water in Black Creek for sure. That's the tank. You're right. It looks, I mean, it is only a few years old, but Macaulay looks exactly the same. It's very good water quality.
I have a
Director,
question.
please.
Thank you. My question is, I know the right-of-way agreement for the third well contains language that says that the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Service will rehabilitate the site back to park, you know, do some landscaping and whatnot, back to park status, basically as much as possible. I'm getting quite a few calls from people who live around there and do, you know, are noticing what's happening, and they're saying, you know, it just looks like a big industrial access road going to the third well. Do we have money in the budget for 2021 to rehabilitate the site and pretty it up a bit after the well's finished?
Yes, we actually have money in the project budget to do that. We've committed to returning that park back to its state before we went in, and it was really a timing thing. Literally the Monday that they started construction, we had a couple inches of snow that weekend, and yeah, I've also, I understand that the water main job where they're hauling machine in and out is quite messy, but we have committed to making it pretty again.
Okay, because I think people will want to enjoy the park once the water well is up and running, and I know you're going to need access to it with your pickup trucks and that, but if we could just make it a little better, be great. I know it's in the agreement anyway.
Yeah.
In the right-of-way agreement, but just wanted to ensure you had money in the budget.
Yep, we do.
Okay. That's
Leave
it for me.
Behind but your footprints.
Good. So I move recommendation 2 if we've received.
Okay, well,
Actually, we're not quite finished the presentation. That was the
Oh,
Oh, sorry,
highlights.
excuse me.
I want another slideshow, please.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, no more photos, but we'll get into the numbers. Thanks, Mike. That was excellent. Yeah, so just very briefly, a summary of the financial plan that's in front of you. So I've highlighted 3 areas here just for further discussion. So the first one is user fees. So during our last financial planning process, we committed to undertaking a rate review in 2020 with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of our tasks were delayed. The public consultation was a lot more challenging last year, so the rate review was delayed. We also felt the need at the time to kind of defer any significant rate increases for the service area while the community deals with the pandemic. So we had flagged it to undertake it this year. Unfortunately, as we walked through the financial planning process, it became clear that that the interim 5% rate increase that was approved at the end of 2019 and implemented last year was not going to be sufficient to avoid the service slipping into a deficit.
Can't hear anything.
He's frozen.
Oh, there. Yeah, they said my internet connection was unstable.
Well, they said I was unstable,
Yeah, I'm unstable too.
but they're frozen right up down there.
I know, they're frozen. But maybe it's our internet. Maybe we should turn off our videos and
No,
mute.
my experience says that it always figures itself out.
Okay.
Just old tough.
Shall I send them a message that they're frozen? Because he's still.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks. I'm not sure where I cut off there.
Right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning. Okay. All right. So we had planned to do a rate review in 2020, and we were hoping to be in the position right now of being able to recommend a program or a kind of a schedule of rate increases for the service. COVID-19 has delayed that. And in the interim, we are, this plan is by necessity, it does include another 5% increase for 2021. So the numbers in front of you, so as you'll see, there's a $26,000 increase in revenue slated between 21 and 20. And so that represents that 5% increase. And so we are fully committed to undertaking that rate review this year. So when we do come back to you next time around, we'll do so with armed with the results of the rate review, with a much more detailed knowledge of where we need to go with rates for this service.
Okay.
And just bear with me. There we go. Okay, so the next one is personnel costs. And so we're yeah.
Director Lee, can you share screen?
Pardon me?
Hold on, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
I can
It's
hear you.
okay. Go on, yeah.
We're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So yeah, next one I want to highlight is personnel costs. So year over year, we're looking at a 15% increase this year, which is significant for the service. And that's, we've got the regular QP increases that we see year over year. In addition to that, this year we're correcting kind of a historical under allocation of funds to the internal finance department allocation. So we've now adjusted that. So that's a one-time adjustment to fully fund the support from the finance department for this service. So that's the personnel cost. And then on the third one that I wanted to highlight was operating. So as Mike mentioned in his highlights for the coming year, we are flagging the need for a water master plan for the service. And that is we've allocated $100,000 for that. And that piece has pushed the estimated operating costs up by by a net increase of $87,000 for the year, which shows up as a 25% increase to the operating cost, just given the relatively small scale of the service. So I can just touch a little bit more detail on that piece, echo everything that Mike said about the need for that master plan. And I just would add that it really will complement the asset management work done for the service. Asset management looks at the age and condition of our infrastructure and predicts when it will need to be upgraded, and ensures that we're contributing enough to reserves that we can fund at least part of that replacement when it's due. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't look at whether we should be replacing that pipe with a same size pipe or a larger one to accommodate growth, just put very simplistically. So what this master plan will do, in addition to reassessing our source capacity, it will look at the key elements of the distribution network and provide recommendations for how to upgrade it when it comes time to replace, and in some cases potentially even upgrading ahead of the replacement date if our capacity is being constrained. Oh, okay, sure. Just bear with us for one minute. I think, did you lose the presentation there, directors?
It's just frozen. Yeah.
Okay.
It's frozen on Magic Quadrant from Meeting Solutions. I don't know what that is.
Okay, we're going to bring back the presentation. Just bear with us for a couple moments.
There we are.
Okay, so you've got it back? Excellent. Okay, so this is the second to last slide. And this is just a high-level overview of the key capital works that we're anticipating for 21. So as Mike mentioned, the completion of the new production well, very exciting. We're getting close to the end. We've the well was drilled last year, and we're well underway towards completion of the connection of that new well to our existing infrastructure. And then finally, the installation of the kiosk that will be placed above the well. So that's an estimated value of $680,000, of which 83% is funded from the Community Works Fund grant. The second one, as Mike mentioned, was the Polson Schultz Oyster Riverway water main connection. So that capital cost has grown, but as Mike mentioned, it will now provide a significant benefit to the distribution system in that area by avoiding a significantly sized dead end and looping the system in that area. So engineering was completed last year, and we're currently working with developers and landowners in the area on the approvals and right-of-ways required to complete that this year. And then finally, this year's installation or installment of the meter replacements, for which there is a recommendation on the staff report to allocate approximately a third of the replacement cost for this program of meter replacements from the Community Works funds. And so we're recommending that approximately a third, so 100,000 out of the approximately 240,000 total over the 4 years, be from Community Works funds, to be shared approximately 30-70 between Area D and Area C.
I have a question on that. Could I jump in?
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how are your community work funds doing?
Well, I think I've got lots of community work funds, but I haven't seen, like, although I talked to the finance manager at the SRD and the CAO, and they said no problem with the 30,000 contribution, I haven't seen anything come up. Well, we haven't done our budget discussions, so I haven't seen anything formal come up at the board, at the SRD board, to ratify the 30,000. So I'm a little nervous about, I mean, if it's in there and then something happens where the SRD board goes the way it did on the well agreement, you know, if they don't allow the 30,000, then what? Should we have it in there and then just amend the budget if we can't get it out of them, or what?
Just one piece of information. I know that I've been supporting Wolfgang.
Yeah, Pradis.
Yeah, that's right. So I know he's been drafting a staff report to support the request on your end, Director Lee. So obviously I can't speak to what the outcome will be, but I do know that that is in the works, and we're supporting that process.
Yeah, I support it too, but I'm just saying that I'm only one vote at that board, and you never know how things go there. So I'm just a little cautious after our right-of-way dispute.
Well, it's Area D. It's your work funds. At the end of the day, you can't spend it on the way they want.
And I've spent community work funds in the past on Black Creek Oyster Bay, ultraviolet disinfection and things. So, it's precedent's already set that I can spend it from my community work funds. It's just that the board has to vote on it because it's a single service for me.
Yeah, it is.
So.
Anything else, Chris?
Just a final summary slide, and then that's it. And we're open for questions. So just to summarize, there will be an interim rate increase in 2021 if this proposed plan is approved. We'll undertake the detailed rate analysis this year, and we're also, in parallel with that, we are committed to assessing the budgeted personnel allocations, because I've neglected to mention at the summary slide that we have noticed that the budgeted operator costs are consistently above what's actually being billed. So we make an effort to estimate what the projected operator costs will be for the service, but only time spent on the service is actually billed to the service. So we will be reviewing those allocations this year, and that is likely to result in an adjustment to the operator allocations, which will reduce the budgeted personnel costs moving forward and bring that budgeted versus actual closer together. On the community partnership side, we've secured, after multiple years of working closely with the SRD, we secured their support for the third well towards the end of last year, and we're just waiting for the final SRW plan to be registered before finalizing that access agreement with the SRD, which is quite an exciting development. We are in the final stages of consultation with Watuco, just waiting to hear back from the managers, and expecting to proceed with a petition process at some point this year. The farm status rebate was extended in early 20, and we'll be reassessing it in 22 at the end of the current 3-year term. From a climate crisis and environmental stewardship side, we're almost have a new source of water on stream to increase our resilience to potential drought conditions, and we are also in the process of assessing additional water in case our water master plan concludes that we need additional capacity after we bring this one online. And then finally, from an Indigenous relations perspective, we are keeping the Comox First Nations Chief and Council updated on all matters relating to water licensing extraction within this service area, as following up on an expression of interest from them. That's all from us, so happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, the First Nations are very keen on water.
So I have a question. I'm recognized. So access agreements by First Nations, are we obliged in any way to allow outside entities to access our water? I know that there is a development in RAD that's just starting to take off that would like to have water, but I don't know where they're going to get it from. And I know that the dispute over the right-of-way agreement was sort of hinged on, or SRD was asking if we would send water northward, and we're not sending water northward as far as I know. I want clarity on that one.
Sure. So the item listed here under summary is I don't have any reason to believe that it was in relation to.
What did you mean when you said access agreement then? What is the access agreement you're talking about?
So the access agreement I mentioned was under the community partnerships, and that was with the SRD. So that and actually you referenced it in your question. So that access agreement has been finalized and approved by both boards, but it hasn't been executed yet. It's just waiting for the statutory right of way. So that's the access agreement I was mentioning. From the KFN perspective, they've just expressed a general interest in groundwater in the region. And because we are extracting groundwater for this water service area, we are keeping them up to date. So there's not been any conversation about delivery of water to the KFN from this service area.
Would there be anything in the agreement for water to Clowitzies?
No, they, like any other property owner on the perimeter or outside of the water service area, would have to make an application to be connected to Black Creek Oyster Bay, which would have to be considered by you. And we're not in discussions with any property owners to the north at this time. And
I do believe they're in the Northern Area Water Service anyway. They're not BCOB because they're on the north side of Oyster Bay. They're north off of York Road and Henry Road.
Well, in the name making time here, we're getting very near the cusp of the 10 o'clock hour.
Okay, and, so I move. Did we do receipt already?
We haven't voted on it though.
Okay, let's vote on it.
Any opposition to receipt? That carries, and we have two recommendations.
Move recommendation 1 and 2.
Okay, is that okay with staff? Move 2 concurrently. So we'll take it is, and so on 1 and 2, any further discussion? Okay, we're going to call the question. Any opposition? That carries.
Moved.
We did make a slight mistake. If we go back to to item 2, recommendation 3. We never got around to moving it. Black Creek Oyster Bay Services Committee Financial Planning for 3.
Oh, I'll move 3.
Yeah, I'll second it. We just missed it. Any opposition to 3? Seeing none, that carries. And that brings us to the termination time.
Move termination.
Seconded. I think they're all frozen down there at the
They're
CBR.